Right, thanks for joining me for another one of these videos. Hope that you find this useful. In this video I am going to talk to you about my experience doing the ADI Part 2 test. So this is a 1 hour long driving test where you are marked to a higher criteria than what you would be if you were doing a normal driving test. You get given an allowance of 6 driving faults only, whereas typically you would have 15. So I booked my Part 2 test not long after passing my Part 1. I was like, I just want to get on with this. So I booked mine in a place called Upton. So Upton is on the Wirral, which is basically just over the River Mersey. Where I live in North Manchester, it's about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half drive, depending on the traffic. Dead easy, M60, M56, M53, going up towards Birkenhead. If you are looking at booking your Part 2 test and Upton comes up as a test centre, and this is an area that you're going to be able to get to and go and do some practicing, which I'm going to talk about more why I found that useful later in the video, do consider this area, because what I found with it was, even when I went there for practice driving, even at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the roads never ever seem to be that busy. There's a few roundabouts in that area that can be a bit tricky. Clatterbridge is one of them. That I'm not a gambling man, but I'm probably going to say if you do a Part 2 test at Upton, chances are you're going to do Clatterbridge roundabout. So if you are going there and you are going to go and practice, get yourself and practice on that roundabout, what lanes you need to be in, how it all works, where your exits are. And also there's a roundabout in an area called Morton, which is all 2-lane approaches to the roundabout. Each turn off the roundabout has a pedestrian crossing. It's just a bit of a bitch of a roundabout, really. That's the politest way to put it. You've just kind of got to be very much take it at a sensible speed, watch what's going on to your right, watch what's going on to your left, what's happening with those cars that are joining from that junction as soon as you turn off. Expect there to be pedestrians on the crossing. If there's not, then fantastic. Yeah, that for me was one of the tricky ones to go and do. But if you are struggling at the moment to get a Part 2 test and you are kind of northwest England and Upton comes up as a test centre, don't rule it out, because it's quite, I'm not going to say it's an easy area to drive around, but it's big main roads, nice wide roads. Most of the main roads are 40. There's not really many roads. Like when you drive around parts of North Manchester, there's quite a few areas where even the main roads drop down to 20, and you're constantly looking and going, oh, is it a 30? And it can be something like that catches you out. So as I talked about a few minutes ago, I did some practice days in the area. I spent 2 full days in and around Upton, Birkenhead, West Kirby, all the areas where they could actually take you round on one of these tests, just to get familiar with it. You know, where's West Kirby in relation to the test centre? Where is Birkenhead or Wallasey, if they're instructing me to follow the road signs, just so I've got a bit of an idea that if I'm in Morton and they ask me to go to Wallasey, well, actually when I get to Morton roundabout, I know that I'm turning right, and it just gives me a bit of familiarisation. So on the day, it's one less thing for me to be concerning myself with. It doesn't feel like I'm driving around an area that's completely unknown to me. So like I say, I spent 2 days going there, you know, take a brew with me, have some lunch and stuff while I'm there, and just get to know the area, get to know the roads, get to know some of the speed limits, just so it's not alien when you go there to go and do the test. If you've got the opportunity to go and do that, please consider doing so. And like I say, don't write off that area if that comes up as a Part 2 test. Seriously consider it. If you can get to there, especially if you can get around and do some practicing, please do consider doing so. So I did that. My test was on the 15th of November, which was last week as I'm recording this. I booked my test in for 12:15, so it's a nice time of day to be driving around. I've not got peak time traffic to be contending with. I've not got school traffic to 2:30 in the afternoon. I've not got rush hour traffic in the evening. It's quite a nice time of day to be actually doing your test. So I went into the test centre. and you're kind of sat there, and you've got all these kids around you who are doing the driving test, and like you kind of walk in, and like you get a few instructors that look at you like as if to say, "What are you doing here? Why is there a mank in the Wirral?" It's like, "Oh, are you here doing like your part 3 test or your part 2 test?" And it was nice to kind of just have a few conversations with people, and them saying, "Oh, keep a watch out for this area," or "Do you know what instructor you've got?" Or if they take you out to that area there, or "Watch out for these roundabouts or junctions that take you to." And I just found that nice to have people offering a little bit of help and support on the day. So then your instructor will come out and meet you. They will bring out an iPad just to confirm some details with you, go out with you to your car. They will then do a walk round and an inspection of your vehicle. They will ask you, have you got your own interior mirror? I just thought it was a nicety for the sake of £7 or £8 off Amazon, just to get a mirror, and just, it's literally just a suction cup on your windscreen. They will then ask you a couple of safety questions before then getting into the vehicle. So I got asked about tread depth on my tyres. How do you check them? And what was the other one I got asked? I think like an under the bonnet one as well. And it was like, yeah, that's fine, I'm happy, let's get in the vehicle. Very much a day like it is today, very cold, raining, so just as a bit of courtesy, you get yourself comfortable, you're warm enough, that sort of thing. And it's like, right, this is what the structure of your test is going to be. It's going to be an hour. We're going to do some manoeuvres, we'll do some driving under instruction, we'll do some independent driving, and then obviously we'll come back here in an hour's time. So they do want a few bits of information from you. They do want to see your driving license, make sure you've got it with you on the day. They asked about who my trainer was and who I'm doing my training with. If you've got that information with you, I took it all with me in a big folder full of shite. So they do, on my occasion when I went, they asked about who you're doing your training with, who's your trainer, what's their name, do you have their ADI number, and are they audit registered? So if you've got that information with you, that's fantastic. For those of you who follow me on Facebook, you will know there's about a few days before I did my test, there seemed to be a bit of confusion about whether my existing car insurance policy with Aviva would allow me to take a driving test in my own vehicle. Now it transpires that the policy that I've got, it does do so. Just to cover myself, I took my insurance certificate and also just confirmation in an email that Aviva had actually said, yes, it's okay to do a part 2 driving test. So please check that out with your insurer and make sure that that's something that is okay for you to do. It seemed like when I was asking Aviva initially, they'd said to me, "Chris, no, it's not okay, you can't do it." So then I'd asked a question on some Facebook groups, and they were like, just get yourself a 1-day insurance cover. But then some of the companies that I was going to were also then saying, no, we don't do it. And you're kind of getting a lot of conflicting information. So even if your insurance company says to you, we would not cover you for doing this test, just go back and ask them just to double check and make sure if it is a no, that it definitely is a no. Because like I say, first time round, Aviva would have knocked me back, and then I would have had to go to a separate company to get a 1-day insurance policy, which would have been around about anything between about 30 and 40 quid just to get a few hours worth of cover just to go and do a driving test, which then transpires I didn't actually need. Anyway, back to the test. So off we went out of the test centre. So I'm like, this is great, I've got a bit of an idea now where I'm going. Incredibly nervous, clammy hand, gripping onto the steering wheel. And we did quite a bit of the areas that I'd known. So I've done quite a lot of the main roads around the test centre, some of the residential estates as well. So again, just be wary of narrow roads, oncoming vehicles. Some of them have got some 20 mile an hour speed limits. So again, just be cautious of that. But what I found was when I did this test, we did a lot of rural driving. And although I picked up 3 driving faults on the actual test itself, 2 of them came from doing 60 mile an hour on country roads. And as then you're taking bends, and obviously I am slowing down as I'm going around the corners, but literally as soon as you go around the corner, you're then coming into a village, and it's not far off going into the village where it drops straight down from being a 60-mile-an-hour road, national speed limit road, all the way down to 30 miles an hour. So there was 2 occasions, once when they're going into a village and once when we were on a dual carriageway, which then became a single carriageway road. So we're still at 60 on that road, and then again just a little bit further along there it drops from 60 to 40. And what I find is when I'm driving around some of the countryside areas around North Manchester, so going up in the hills and going up into Saddleworth, there's quite a few areas around there where it gives you a bit of an advance notice before you're dropping into an area which is going from a 60 or 50 road down to 30. You know, you normally get markers on the road saying no, it's 30 mile an hour in a mile's time or half a mile's time, whereas with this you don't. So there's a couple of times where I've gone over the line where it was saying this is now a 30 zone, and one of them where I went over at 38. So the instructor kind of just put it down as a driving fault, thankfully not as a serious or not as a dangerous one. But when I asked for the feedback at the end of the test, like what you could do with doing just as an improver going forward is just be a bit more conscious of the scenery and what are you seeing around you. So even though you're driving through the countryside, you can see there's some houses there on the horizon. You can see there's a church. You can see you're kind of coming into like a residential area. So just because you can drive this road at 60, you don't know that as soon as you get around the corner, it's not going to drop down to a 30. So these are just little things that at the end of the test, what I wanted to know was that where I did score the 3 driving faults. So 2 of them was for kind of not getting down to 30 in time for when the sign instructed me so, and the other one was for use of mirrors. But the 2 speed ones are like just be conscious of not necessarily what you're seeing on the road. You know, what are you doing, what are other vehicles doing, what are vehicles in front of you and behind you doing, what are oncoming vehicles doing. But just be mindful that if you're kind of going out from countryside and you can see houses or any sort of building on the horizon, just take that might be that as you get closer to that, potentially there could be a drop in speed, and if there's not, so be it. And that then kind of we did a few trips down the motorway. So we did a 3-mile run on the motorway, then we went round a few more roads, and we did about a 4.5-mile run back on the motorway. So again, lovely to be out driving. Again, you know, got in the vehicle up to 60, 65 because we weren't having the best of days in terms of the weather, but just again constantly watching what's going on around me, what's going on in my mirrors, what's going on there, if I'm overtaking, what's going on in my blind spot before popping an indicator on and going. And as was instructed to me at the start of the test, you need to be driving at a standard which is, you know, you need to be showing to me as an examiner that you can drive safely and competently. You know, you're not being assessed like a learner driver, a 17-year-old, a person that's done 20-30 hours of driving tuition and this is the first time of actually sitting a driving test. You are already a driver. You need to be showing that when you're actually doing this test with me. So got back to the test centre. I thought, hand on heart, I'd failed because the Clatterbridge roundabout that I mentioned earlier, and this is why if you're doing a driving test at Upton, you need to go and practice this roundabout because it's a swine. It's so easy just to kind of be in the wrong lane. Go and practice this area if you've got a driving test here, especially some of these ones that I've mentioned to you. I thought I had failed on that because I was in the middle lane, and for me to carry on around the roundabout I actually needed to be on the lane closest to the centre of the roundabout. And although I'd indicated to say I'm moving over to this lane, thankfully there was a vehicle coming from behind me that was just approaching slow enough to allow me to be in the right lane. And in my head at the time I'm going, do you know what, the best thing to do here is actually take the wrong junction, do so safely and recognise that you've done that and maybe incur a fault for that, but you've not done anything that's dangerous, or you know, you've not caused any other driver to have to take action or to brake. You've taken the safest course of action, even if it means you've taken the wrong exit. But when I was doing that, I'm like, oh, I've screwed this up. I failed. It's 111 quid down the pan. And then got back to the test centre and was like, you know, Chris, you know, well done. You've passed, you know, 3 driving faults. Here's what they are. Thank you very much, mate. have a nice day. And that is that's your part 2 test, really. Manoeuvres, we did pulling up on the left hand side of the road, pull up on the right hand side of the road, you know, set off when it's safe to do so. So again, watch what's going on around you. If it's not safe, don't go. We did parallel parking, which the street we were on, absolutely fine, nice big wide road. Again, you're watching. If you see a vehicle coming from behind you, or a vehicle coming towards you, stop the manoeuvre, don't go any further. Be constantly looking, use all your mirrors, make sure you're looking out the back of the vehicle, because it's very easy just to be using mirrors and just yeah and just a cursory glance out the back. Just use every point that you've got to have a look at to make sure that you get that manoeuvre right. And then the final manoeuvre was reverse bay parking, which was done when we pulled back into the test centre. It's just pull up on the left hand side of the test centre. You're going to see that some of these cars here are going to be leaving shortly. When they have, I will instruct you to just pick a bay of your choice and reverse back into it. So all things considered, not an impossible test. I don't think my nerves helped. I don't think my anxiety's helped. Doing the roundabout at Clatter Bridge about 10 minutes into it, and then panicking at that point, thinking I've failed, and then keeping going through a test thinking, oh, I've lost this, to then find that I haven't, was just a massive relief. If you are doing this test and think you've got something wrong, you might not have, don't let your perception or your view that you potentially I could have screwed something up here, therefore I'm now going to be on edge for the rest of the test. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have. It does require effort, it does require concentration, it does require driving at a higher standard, but this is things that I can do. You know, I've been driving for well over 5 years now. Prior to having a car, I've had a scooter, which makes me potentially a bit of an overcautious driver, because you know you've got that vulnerability when you're on two wheels, that you kind of you don't really get that degree of protection when, you know, as a car driver, you're in a much safer environment than what you are if you're on a 125 scooter. So, but do you know what? Main thing is, passed it first time. Incredibly proud of that as an achievement. So that now just takes me for the next few weeks. I'm just gonna have a little bit of time out now with the family. Wanted to make a couple of videos just to talk to potential driving instructors going forward, or for people that are considering this as a career change. What does a part 1 test look like? What does a part 2 training look like? What does the part 2 test look like? Obviously when I do the part 3 one in the new year, I'll do a little bit more of a talk through in terms of all of them things as well. So I am going to wrap it up here. Thanks very much for joining me for another one of these videos. If you have found it useful, then that's absolutely fantastic. Hope you've actually got something from it. If you are doing a part 2 test, or if you've got any sort of test or training coming up yourself, best of luck with it. You know, believe in yourself. Try and have some confidence in your driving capabilities. If you're doing a part 2 test, that's because you've passed the part 1 test. You've got through a much harder theory test and a much stricter hazard perception test than what any car driver has to do. So you've got to the part 2 test for a reason, because you've got that capabilities to do it. You've got that little bit of a margin for error. But do you know what? I wanted no faults. The fact that I got 3, 2 of them potentially could have been avoided, and going forward in future, that's just something where I will learn. If I'm doing a 60 road, just anticipate that round the corner it might drop down to 30 or 40, rather than just presuming because I've not seen any signs that have told me otherwise. That's it for this video. I'm going to go home now and have some tea. Hope you found it useful. Like I say, whatever you've got coming up, test wise, training wise, best of luck with it. Enjoy it, and good luck with your future career as a driving instructor.